All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Week in Italian Startup. How are you, Nick?
Ciao Jack, I'm great. How are you? You've been to the Valley, haven't you?
Yeah, the Valley's been interesting. Very positive feedback for the next years to come. So that there was a nice vibe going on, I would say. So yeah, overall, I think there is optimism in general, and I really hope that this kind of translate in everything that is happening in Europe. So yeah, the Valley is positive right now as of May, June 2025. So things are moving. AI is graduating to different kind of layers and applications. So a lot of people are talking about that. And yeah, overall it was a great feedback for the ecosystem. Yeah. So what about
You're
Italy,
bringing
Nick?
back.
What happened in May?
Well, actually, May was kind of boring in Italy. I mean, some news from the broader market. We have a new CEO at CDP Venture Capital, Emanuele Levi, who's probably the first one who actually has a strong background in venture capital. He's been in 360 for like ever. So he was a general partner there. So it will be interesting
Fantastic.
to see, yeah, to see him in this new role. I think
Yeah.
this is the biggest news outside of the usual ones.
Interesting. Do you have a feeling that maybe there is going to be some major change for CDP given the new CEO, or the strategy is kind of set on its rails and it's gonna move? Any insights on that?
I have absolutely no idea. I kind of expect that the strategy will stay more or less in line with the current one, with some tweaks with respect to how things will probably proceed going forward. Hopefully, with
Interesting.
higher connections with the outside world, outside of Italy. Levi comes from France. He was living in France. He was operating from France. So I expect and I hope that it will strengthen connections with the other ecosystem. That might be an interesting addition to the current strategic plan. So CDP is already operating to bring external capitals to Italy, but this might be a further move to be better integrated within Europe.
Love it. Perfect. All right, let's dive into last week news, starting from Moneyfarm. Moneyfarm, a wealth management company, raising 10 million pounds in a growth round from Poste Italiane and Allianz. So we've been tracking Moneyfarm, what they've been doing. So it's a London and Milan-based company with Italian founders. They've been like really moving fast in terms of in the fintech space, especially in like democratizing access to basically investment options. So that's a very interesting angle. Quite successful, I would say. And there is a lot of talk happening in Italy and in the UK for sure. And interesting as they are growing by acquisition, by acquiring like different strategic companies, and how the company is actually is performing. So interesting to see them like raise. And I don't know if you have some feeling on this round in particular, but yeah, there are a few things to cover here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Moneyfarm comes from has been around for a long time, and they raised quite a few rounds of capital with also strategic investors. I think there are a few venture capital funds in cap table. United Ventures might be one still there. Um, so the feeling is the nature of this round, considering that Moneyfarm raised sizable rounds before this one. 10 million is kind of a weird number. So it might have different uses. One is, um, stabilizing cash level and cash flows and support the company, normal operations, or it might be a liquidity injection to support further M&A, since Moneyfarm has been acquiring quite a few operators and growing their managed capital base also by acquiring other minor players. So we'll see the next
Interesting.
news. What
Yeah.
comes up next?
No, for sure. So what is interesting is that I was thinking also in what is happening in the fintech Italian ecosystem, especially for companies with some significant level of traction. So my first thought went to Satispay actually, and in particular to the news that Satispay was expanding to basically financial services and in their offering portfolio. So that's interesting, as Satispay is like evolving beyond payments in particular, and also giving access to some sort of investment like platforms in a way that really tastes like Moneyfarm in a way, I would say. So it's interesting to see how these two companies are like, even though they started from a very different standpoint and different geographies, different mission for sure, they're like converging on certain elements. So just to give you some context, to give the listener a little bit of a context. So both Moneyfarm and Satispay kind of started in the same period. So Moneyfarm is a 2011 company, Satispay 2013. Moneyfarm basically is kind of a smaller compared to Satispay, both in terms of valuation and user base. Basically, Moneyfarm, well, there are different sources here. It's really not public, but it should be around like $500 million in terms of valuation, roughly. And in terms of active user, together with the acquisition that they've been doing in the past months, they are touching about 650,000 users active on the platform. The employee count is about like 220 people, so it's a good size, not massive, and of course a lot of news regarding acquisition. On the other hand, we have Satispay with 5.5 million user, of course more than 1 billion in valuation, and basically more when it comes to volumes in terms of user activity and activation. Of course, also for Satispay, we need to count in and factor in all the B2B businesses that are on part of the platform, which are around 380,000. So very, very significant number. But, despite the differences, I would say what is interesting is how exactly some of the elements are converging, especially on the investment side. And I don't know what's your first impression in terms of if we had to, give a quick comparison between like Moneyfarm and Satispay.
Well, as you were describing the two, I was thinking about Satispay was born in the business of flowing money or making money flow, basically, whereas Moneyfarm was born in the pooling money business. Basically, wealth management is about attracting as much capital as possible and managing it for someone else. So Satispay is kind of pivoting to making money, to pooling the money, to acquiring and pooling the money, other than making it flow. I might have some considerations about this. For example, the net revenues that you can get in the two business models. The flow part is probably becoming quite competitive, as there is a lot of competitive pressure at bringing fees down. And also the major players, Mastercard and Visa, are very aggressive. So it's a difficult world out there. Wealth management is not easier, that's for sure. But it's different.
Absolutely.
So, it is interesting that Satispay is trying to pivot or expanding its offering into the business of pooling money and managing money, wealth management.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is to see actually how the two different strategic approach are giving results. For Moneyfarm is really an acquisition kind of play. So back in a few episodes, we talked about how Moneyfarm acquired Willy Sones by basically also like integrating their user base in the platform. And then we need to remember that they also bought like Earnest, which is an AI platform. So again, hinting maybe to some very important integration in the platform. Satispay, on the other hand, is like more aggressive in terms of the offering part, directly being born within the company. So interesting perspective. They're definitely like both working and very, very, very different. Yeah.
In the case of Moneyfarm and eventually of Satispay, if they move towards wealth management, and would also consider the part about how much money they're managing. So users count becomes a secondary metric. And that's how much money are you actually managing. I think Moneyfarm got to 6 billion ish.
6 billion. Yes, correct. Absolutely.
Okay, 6 billion. 6 billion. And still a very tiny player in that market. So there should be a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
I would
I
be
mean, my
curious about
question
the
would
volumes
be
of
to.
Satispay. No, please.
Yeah, no, I was going on the same line of thought. My question would be to see like, people saving on Satispay, how likely they are to actually like access and be interested in an investment product. People that are on the Moneyfarm platform, probably I would say they're easier to convert in an eventual, payment solution and wink to Moneyfarm over here, just saying, okay, maybe they will think about the payment parts and going really after like any payment like provider. So it's interesting to see how maybe the customer base is also sensitive.
That's a fair idea. I mean, Mastercard is eager to get customers from any part of the financial ecosystem. So there might be something there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moneyfarm, if you are listening, please remember Giacomo and Lisa.
Yeah. Interesting. One thing that also we were like before this podcast, me and Niccolo, we kind of bounce off ideas, and one idea that came out very interesting was the fact that the more overlapping this company are, and that's here another wink, the more maybe the opportunities for a collaboration or some form of building like the super app, doing everything in fintech. So there you go, it's out there. Let's see what's happening, and it's quite realistic, I would say.
So now the question would be, do they have overlapping shareholders?
Interesting.
I have no answer to this question. Just
no idea. Yeah.
Because
awesome.
That would simplify things. Anyhow.
Yeah. Let's talk about the bad news, actually, Nick, that we were talking before, which is both companies are not profitable yet. Small detail. So, jokes aside, there is a cycle for which like fintech companies tend to become profitable or not. If I remember well, like companies like, for example, and I'm not going to say it's the perfect example, but it's just a benchmark. I think Revolut got profitable after like 4 to 6 years. I think that was the range. But that's different. Of course, it's a neobank. It's a different kind of cycle. There is some tweaking. 10-year span, generally, it's kind of on the verge of being a little bit on the late side, I would say, Nick, for a fintech company. Generally, I think the midpoint, like 5 years, probably is the typical like profitability point, I would say. But again, we need to consider also the strategic underlying part, which is, do we want to build the volumes and get to profitability once we get volume, and also because we have volumes, or we are, cutting cost, optimizing operations so we can be profitable immediately. That's also the strategic issue to actually take into consideration, for sure.
Yeah, I have no idea. Probably in the case of Satispay, the current benchmark would be, other than Revolut, that's a different beast, Venmo or PayPal.
Yeah, good point.
Those guys are deploying new payment ecosystems, and Venmo and PayPal have been playing in the US. That's completely different market. But still,
very true.
You're onto something. It really depends on where does this, the loss coming from. Still pushing for growth, or economics are not working. So the news they're releasing is we are still pushing and we're growing. So let's see.
Interesting. All right, switching gear maybe to some other mention from last year rounds in Italy. We need to mention Wetacoo, storage delivery startup, raising 3.4 million in Series A round from VC partner Zest and CDP Venture Capital. This is a company that is essentially trying to digitize a very old and clunky business, which is like moving when people move from house to house. So they're trying to make it as seamless as possible through digitization, RFID technology, and on-demand warehouse services. So it's an interesting play, I would say. Whenever there is an old business which is super clunky and a pain in the head, being made it simple, that's usually like a good sign. What is interesting I found was also that they're pushing their B2B actually. So like offering this kind of moving and equipment, like not only moving but storage to like companies. And one example that was mentioned was the archives. So in Italy we have there are some serious requirement for companies to keep a bunch of paper stored somewhere and nobody knows where to put those things. And I don't know if nowadays you can digitize and it's legal to digitize everything. You probably need to still have the paper. I don't know, Nick, what's your if you know anything about that?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, do we need the paper? Like, for example, like employee registers, something related to the Agenzia delle Entrate. Like, I don't know if you can digitize everything. Yeah.
I think it really depends. I mean, there's the electronic signature. And there's the third level of the European. Oh God, what's the name? There's the European regulation about the strength of the electronic signature, and the third one is equivalent to a handwritten signature.
Okay.
So that a document signed with electronic signature, the strongest version, can stay electronic.
Yeah.
But I believe that anything else would just be a copy and not deemed the original. I don't know about other type of documents.
Yeah, I think also about people that basically printed document before this law came out. So all the registers, like accounting forms that they're required by government to keep for 10, 15 years if a company is active, something like that, before you can get destroyed. Interesting. It's an interesting angle. I don't know much about it. I kind of read a little bit about it, and that's you can see something for sure because
I can see red tape driven innovation.
Exactly.
Welcome to the story of Europe.
Exactly. All right. On the last note, it's always worth mentioning who are the new players in the venture and investment ecosystem in Italy, I think. So last week, Novaterra was announced. Novaterra, an evergreen capital holding company, basically announcing its activity and its strategic approach, which essentially is working on basically very strategic investments that are supposed to help the Italian infrastructure, both in terms of ecosystem and basically innovation in general. So they're really it's more of a generalist approach, covering between energy, ESG, infrastructure. They're doing a lot of things. The interesting part is that it's an evergreen holding. So basically, a lot of patient investors over there, basically willing to bet on the future of what's happening in the innovation space in Italy in general. And with a very long time frame compared to standard like VC standards, which is like 8, 10 to maybe 12 years as a cycle for a fund. And very interesting for sure.
Yeah, let me take the opportunity from another news from this week. Level Bio raising a round from Claris Ventures to remind that Claris just recently announced their second fund. So kudos to the team. Congratulations. Great play.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to see these things. Actually, that's a good sign that people can raise capital, investor believe in the sector. Sometimes it's closer to PE, sometimes it's closer to early stage. But I would say that maybe later stage kind of investment vehicles, we've been seeing them a little bit. I don't know if it's more than seed stage, but there definitely is an interest to the growth capital sort of part in a way.
Well, don't tell me if you find any growth investor. I mean, there's an opportunity, of course. So we are somewhere in Europe, in particular. It looks like a kind of a Series A crunch. It's not really growth capital, but still, later stages. So there might be an opportunity there right now for new players, that's for sure. And I believe we are in the US. is already up and running, but we are on the verge of seeing a wave of investors, more private equity investors probably, leveraging AI in, acquire, inject AI, leverage with technology and sell type of business. And that will be interesting. So brace yourself for that.
Absolutely. Good news. I mean, if PE is like bleeding toward VC, it's definitely like an interesting good news.
Yeah, we still PE, but so the point of PE is that the expectation is that there are managers that are very good at running companies. They see an opportunity, they acquire a good company, they make it a better company. There's still a huge market with that because they have better management experience or higher connections, stuff like that. But to be real, there are a lot of MBAs, there are a lot of very well-educated managers out there. So a good company can hire the manager and be run profitably without the PE investors coming in. So a PE fund will need to find new sources of alpha.
Yeah, some exceptional people that really can run.
So exceptional people with AI knowing how to use it. It might be a source of alpha.
That's a good point. Yeah, very interesting. Very cool. Very cool. So I just want to mention one last article that you point out in the latest newsletter, which is the myth of the Copilot. It was with Nick, we always talk about how I'm a big fan of Copilot plays. And the article that you point to is how exactly a Copilot is pretty much like a very bad intern helping you to code. And it's in the newsletter, so for the listener, check it out. It's very interesting to see what is the state of the art, and kind of counter current when it comes to say, hey, coders will be obsolete. Well, maybe that's not the case, and maybe it won't be the case.
Yeah, I wanted to post this. This is controversial in a sense. No, I see the AI zealot saying, "Oh, this guy is the old guard. Is his legacy is none. Is out of the market in 5 years, possibly, but he still has got a point. In 5 years, there will be so much bad code that unless we get to AGI, to real AGI, we will need a lot of great people fixing.
But these guys, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So he's got kind of a point there. So we still need the real pros to keep things on track somehow.
100%. That's the state of the art. Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, there is an acceleration for sure, but I still see for the next maybe 10 years, 10 years maybe is too much in AI. It's a glacial age, but yeah, at least 4 or 5 senior engineers who will definitely have their important role.
Yeah, and on this thing, unless we've been living under a rock for the last week. Please read the new report by Mary Meeker. Brew a coffee, sit alone for a couple of hours, and read the new report.
All right, so this brings us to the end of the week of the Italian startup, and thank you, Nick, for joining. And let's get going, and I'll catch up with you next week. Thank you so much.
Okay, ciao, Jack. Take care. Ciao, everybody. See you in a week. Welcome back, Jack.